Hi, and welcome to Matt Holman's Talks Mental Health, the podcast where I have the opportunity to sit down with amazing humans and chat about their journeys and their stories and their experiences around this topic. For this episode, I'm so happy to reintroduce one of my friends to this conversation from episode 132. For those who take notice, Hannah Buckland. Welcome, Hannah.
Hi, thank you, Matt.
And new to this conversation, Julie Castleman. Welcome, Julie. Lovely to have you with us.
Hi, Matt. Lovely to be here.
And I really love having these conversations with sort of a multiple of people. I know most of the episodes are one-on-one, but this is really nice because Hannah and Julie have got a really amazing story that sort of brought them together. They're doing great things in the space of mental health. The common theme for all of us is we are all mental health first aid instructors. We've done this for many, many years, and we've got thousands of delegates under our belt and experiences. So that's the only thing I'm going to share about Hannah and Julie is the commonality of our roles in this space of mental health. But introductions. Julie, I'm going to come to you first, if that's okay. Just a very brief introduction to who you are, a little bit about what you're doing as well.
Oh, keeping it brief. Okay, so Julie Castleman says it on the tin, she, her. I am, well, behind everything, I'm actually a therapist. And I should say behind that, I'm mum, grandmum, mum to cats. But therapist of 25 years, BACP accredited, worked in lots of different sectors, quite a lot of my working life in higher education, so managed a university counselling and mental health team. And that's where I first came across mental health first aid. So very quickly did the training, very quickly became a trainer. So I'm now a national trainer and an associate for Mental Health First Aid England. So help with training their new trainers and instructors, development work, lots of work in the field of suicide prevention. That's where my big passion is, I think. And yeah, doing quite a lot of postvention work with schools, colleges, and universities as well around that.
Thank you, Julie. Lovely to see you. Hannah, going to come to you.
So hi, my name's Hannah Buckland, pronouns are she, her. I'm also an instructor with Mental Health First Aid England, and I'm sure we'll get into this a little bit more, but Julie was my national trainer. So when I became an instructor, Julie took me through that training, and that was the sort of the start of our incredible relationship and friendship that we have all these years on. I also have a huge passion in the field of suicide prevention. Have been doing suicide intervention training now for a number of years. Also done some work with the Charlie Waller Trust and also Brave Minds, the charity that focuses on mental health in the rugby community. So yeah, lots of different things going on. Also parent to teenagers. I'm sort of bookending the teenage years at the moment, which is fun. And yeah, my Springer Spaniel is just outside the study door, promising me that he will be obedient when the postman comes past.
Amazing. Oh, good stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you both. Thank you for those introductions and great. And it's lovely to know a little bit about sort of the context as to your
Mm.
roles in what you've been doing. But at some point this came together, didn't it? You obviously you met through the instructor training and Julie, you
Yeah.
training Hannah in mental health first aid many moons ago. We've all been instructors for a very long time.
Mm.
But what's this venture? So you're now working together, right? That's this beautiful conversation that we wanted to bring to
Yeah.
everybody. So you're working together. You created a business called Junah.
Mhm. Mhm.
Please tell us more about Junah. What is Junah?
What is Junah? So, first of all, just to say how the conversation started, Han and I clicked straight away. It was so lovely delivering training to Han. We just felt we had so much in common, and we stayed in touch from the outset. And Han mentioned within her introduction the Charlie Waller Trust. So, we both
Mm.
work with the Charlie Waller Trust, and we probably seriously started this conversation after delivering some
Mm.
suicide awareness and prevention training in a school in Norwich. So it was after one of those sessions we head out for our evening dinner. So over pasta and a glass of wine, we were kind of talking about where the gaps were in suicide prevention training. So we feel there's some really great trainings around intervention out there. We've both been delivering trainings, and what we felt was that maybe there was less around the prevention bit. What does prevention really mean? So not prevention from the place of spotting signs and preventing action. We see that as part of the intervention. If you're
Yep.
spotting signs and having a conversation, that's an intervention.
Yeah.
We wanted to go back to how can we create mentally healthy workplaces? How can we encourage people to embed well-being within the workplace, within higher education settings? We'll tell you about our vision for younger people maybe a little bit later if we've got time. And the other bit we felt was missing was the postvention bit. So there is some really good support out there for postvention, which is that support if somebody has lost somebody to suicide. So really important, vital support, because we know it has a huge impact on individuals in communities, workplaces, education settings. But what we wanted to do within that was also include, what about the person who's returning to work having been at a crisis place? What about that person who might be returning to education? What about the person who's had a conversation, the supporter? We wanted to support the supporter. So, yeah, Han, you can tell it about our first steps, maybe, otherwise it will all be my
Yeah.
voice. We kind of set up a date to get together. Over to you, Han.
Yeah, so we like Julie says, we were sat in this beautiful Italian restaurant, having delivered some really, really important training to sixth formers. I think we trained about 200 sixth formers, didn't we, with that project, Julie? And it was amazing, and it was actually brought about through their own want and desire to learn more about how they can support each other, which was just incredible. So we had this conversation around those gaps, and we're so passionate about this topic, and it's very meaningful in our own lives, that we said, well, okay, how about we just see if we can fill those gaps? So that conversation sort of happened that evening, but then we decided, well, if we're serious about this, let's get together, and let's get together for a few days. And we had, it was fun, wasn't it? We had flip chart, we had pens, and we wanted to map out what skills do we want to give people to make our communities safer from suicide. And right from the very beginning, our goal has always been, we want to save lives. And that is what we come back to time and time again. We want to reach as many people as we can, and we want to save lives. So we began to map out, what would this day training look like? What do we want people to leave that training space with? What skills and tools do we want to give them? And there is so much that we can share, and so many brilliant pieces of guidance actually that we have brought into our training to really help inform people, so that when they leave at the end of that day, it's not just a tick box, I've done that course and lovely. It's actually they walk away with their workbook thinking, what am I doing next? This is my action plan. How am I taking this back to my workplace, implementing what I've learned? What policies do we need to look at? What, in terms of our culture, what can we improve? What gaps in knowledge are there around resources and support? So we just had all of these wishes, didn't we? And slowly, we started to sort of package that into, what would this day look like?
Brilliant.
Uh,
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like this the start of a story, right? It's a start
Yeah.
and everything. I'm going to pause for a second, and I want to go back to one thing, if that's okay for both
Yeah.
of you. You said, and Hannah, you said it is meaningful in our lives, in our own
Yeah.
life. Can I delve a little bit deeper into that? Why this
Mm.
is a passion? Because obviously you've done a lot of work, but
Yeah.
this area of
Yeah.
suicide prevention and support and training and everything. Just
Mm.
understand just slightly, a little bit of an insight into that, if that's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah. There have been times in my life where, and obviously in more recent years, I felt really equipped to hold difficult conversations with people. Not saying they're ever easy. That I never ever find them easy. I find them incredibly painful sometimes, actually. But there have been times in my life where I've thought, I know that somebody is struggling. And actually, I'm quite worried about what the outcome of that struggling might look like, but I don't know what to do. And I can remember those feelings of actually feeling quite overwhelmed, but also maybe feeling quite responsible as well. And thinking, I don't know what to do. And if I do something, will I make it wrong? Will I say the wrong thing? And actually, this is something that Mental Health First Aid England found when they did a recent survey of about 2,000 employees across England just from this summer. The level of compassion in our communities is high. We
Yeah.
actually have a large percentage of people who want to support others, but actually that knowledge around language, questions, and where to turn to for support for the person, but also for themselves. That's where we're lacking in that knowledge. So I kind of am really kind to my younger self. If you don't know, if nobody sits beside you and says, this is okay, and this is the language, and this is where you can turn to, how do we expect people to hold those really, really difficult conversations? But I'm also, and I'll just really quickly, Matt, I'm also a huge believer in the power of kindness. I know that kindness changed my life. When I started to direct that kindness towards myself, it helped me to show kindness to other people in that more genuine, authentic, meaningful way. And so in our prevention piece, it's not all around hugs and lovely fluffy things. Actually, kindness goes deeper than that. How do we treat each other? And there are things that workplaces are doing fantastically well, but there are also some gaps. And again, I don't think it always comes from people being discompassionate. I think it just comes from we're busy, we've got a lot going on, there's a lot of demands. So let's take a moment to think, how can we bring that kindness back into the workplace if we feel it's lacking, or promote it because it is literally life-saving?
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. I really appreciate your insights there. Julie, how about you?
Yeah, I guess personal and work-wise, I've had some really powerful and concerning conversations with people. I think one of my early conversations as a therapist that changed my vision more into a focus around suicide prevention was with a young person who was in a really vulnerable position, had been working with me for a little while, and then suddenly phoned to say, oh, it's okay, I don't need the appointment anymore, everything's going so much better. And it sparked my curiosity. And it's only later, when I did the mental health first aid training, that I really learned about that unexplained recovery. Even as a therapist, we hadn't really gone into that within our therapy training. So it was like, oh, and wasn't quite sure about it. My instinct was telling me that's not okay. Usually, if a young person doesn't want their appointment, they just don't show up. They go and hang out with their friends. But there was a phone call, there was something reaching out. So I remember saying to that young person, why don't you just pop in and tell me what's changed? It would be really nice to see you. Don't just have to come when things are not going well. Why don't you come and tell me what's happening for you? It'd be really nice to see you. And that person did come in, and that person shared that the thing that had changed was they'd moved from a place of thoughts of suicide to what we call at Junah active thoughts. So that sort of planning, preparing stage of suicide. And it was really powerful. The moment that person said it out loud, they just cried and they said, that's not what I want to do. That's not. And it was that realization of just being able to say it out loud enabled them to see that what they wanted to change was the situation they were in, not for their lives to end. So that was a really powerful conversation. And it was probably about 2 years after meeting that young person that they sent me a card. We were no longer working together. They'd moved away from that setting. But they sent me a card with a life-saving ring. In fact, I've got it next to me. I could show it on camera because it stays in its envelope and next to me
Oh,
all the time. It's just such a powerful. So if that person ever looks at this, you're on my mind. And there are certain people in your life you just never forget. And I've had to have similar conversations in my personal life with people as well. So yeah, it drives that passion, I think.
Oh,
yeah.
100%. And thank you for sharing that. And both of you, thank you for your insights. And I'm always I find it really powerful, when we can be open and transparent and honest about,
Mhm.
these conversations are real, and they're not
Yep.
role plays. They're not in
No.
reenacted. They're real conversations. And look, that card,
Mm.
and that symbolizes something really powerful, doesn't it? That
Yeah.
that person, they held on because somebody was holding on to them, or they were
Yeah.
able to feel safe to talk about it. And I, from my personal perspective of suicide as well, I feel more comfortable talking about it than I ever have, because we're
Yeah.
normalizing it a little bit more
Yep.
with more conversations and surrounding ourselves with incredible people like yourselves, and and the people that I've had the pleasure to work with through the Baton of
Yeah.
Hope, through the young people's
Yeah.
stuff that I get involved with. And yeah, we just have to keep talking, don't we? I'm going
Yep.
to tell you one thing. You mentioned in workplaces, Hannah, about hugs. It's not all about hugging. To me, it is, right? I'm sorry to break this rule, but what I mean by a hug is really simple, and it's not actually the physical
It's
hug.
cool. Yeah, I agree.
It's a very symbolic thing of support,
Yeah.
isn't it? And
Yeah.
kindness,
Yeah,
passion,
yeah,
and love,
Yeah.
and with my daughter in her suicidal crisis, that she's been in many
Yeah.
times. The
Yeah.
one thing it comes back to is she just needs her dad to give her a
Yeah.
hug. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, without doubt. That human connection. Go on.
Yeah. Well, I totally agree. And I was listening to a psychotherapist a couple of weekends ago. I was at a mental health and wellbeing event, and a psychotherapist used the phrase emotionally saturated but starved of connection.
Mm.
Because in today's modern world, we have so many connections in so many ways, often via technology. And if we think about how many people work from home, for example, but actually that meaningful connection where we are with people, and this is meaningful today online, but wouldn't it be amazing if we were around a table together? It's so much nicer to be with people in that space. And so we need to think about how we create those connections and how those connections are meaningful. And actually, the hug, I agree with you, a hug can be the words that we use, where we feel supported, where we feel nurtured. And actually, Julie and I live 3.5 hours, 4 hours away
Yeah.
from each other.
Mm.
We feel that connection because we have created that connection. When we get together, obviously it's amazing. um but you can do it in the words and the actions. But of course, I mean, I really love actual hugs, and they're not always appropriate or wanted by people, but yeah, it's still an important thing.
thank you. No, I appreciate that. Julie, did you want to say anything about hugs?
Well, I just think I think people feel it in everything that we do. Just looking at feedback after people have spent a day with us, or
Mm,
one of us, that feedback is often, it felt really safe. I
yeah.
felt very nurtured and supported.
Yes.
I couldn't have addressed this topic without having felt like it
Yeah.
was delivered in such an empathetic and emotionally held space. So I think people do feel that
Yeah.
hug.
Yeah.
So important, isn't it? And it connects to those other topics around suicide and things like loneliness and isolation and withdrawal, and
Yeah.
I've talked recently more about sort of loneliness and isolation, which a lot of people are struggling with as well. And
Mm.
so it's all interconnected, isn't it? We know it is. We know that there's a
Yeah.
whole system that's playing through all of that. Um, let's talk about the training, the work you're doing, because it's not just, you're partnering with Mental Health First Aid England as well in this training. So it's recognized
Mm,
as an enhancement to the programs of Mental Health
yeah.
First Aid, which of course we talked about earlier. So explain or describe, or give us an insight into what that looks like from your perspective.
And we were super excited about the partnership. I mean, I guess just almost step back, just thinking about the training as a whole, that training we wanted to make sure was really robust. So that was fed by, as Hans said, we bring in policy recommendations, guidance that's already out there, but we also had an awful lot of conversations with people, including colleagues at Mental Health First Aid England, but people out in workplaces, people with lived experience to inform the training. And what we kept hearing was, I want to know how to.
Yeah.
It's all good, well and good having awareness and information, but we want to know how to actually apply the skills that Han mentioned earlier. So that informed our training. We wanted to make sure it was really reliable, evidence-based, but also accessible, practical, and met the needs of our amazing, diverse communities, all of which falls in line with our values and belief, all of which fell in line with mental health, fall in line with Mental Health First Aid England's values and beliefs. So we always had the mental health first aid training in mind as we were developing the training. We wanted it to feel like it was a kind of enhancement of the suicide section within that training. And so when we did our pilot, we approached the Royal Society of Public Health, who also accredit the mental health first aid training. We had a conversation with them, took them through the basic line of what the training was, showed them examples of our course material, etc. So they've invited us as well to go for accreditation, something which we will do a little bit later. So we went armed with all of this knowledge. We contacted Sarah at Mental Health First Aid England, Sarah McIntosh, who said, "Yeah, come in, have a conversation." And it was really lovely because we were face to face. We had hugs. We sat down at a table. My laptop wasn't working. It was brilliant. So thankfully, Han had hers as well. So we did a laptop. Yeah, it was a real human conversation and connection. And we went through again just a kind of pilot slide that we put together. And that started conversations. So we continued conversations for a while, and eventually what we agreed was, yes, this does absolutely fit with part of our workplace suite that we would like to offer. So that partnership, Han said at the beginning, we want to save lives. That partnership will increase our reach to people, to organisations, to education settings, to save lives. So yeah, we agreed that we would roll for within that partnership that the training is run through their workplace team, so that will reach all of their clients, and obviously any clients who are interested can come via us, and we will show them how to connect with the workplace team to find out more and book trainings.
Amazing. Good stuff. Hannah, anything else to add, or has Judy sold it all?
Just to add, we're also a social enterprise, so
Yeah.
that's another aspect of Junah. We wanted to make sure that any profits that we make as a business, we plough back into community offerings and developing other training.
Amazing. And does that lead into the sort of the thoughts around younger people as well? Because I know that was sort of part of the plan. Maybe that's
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we
Absolutely.
we'd really, really love to, and we will develop a course that is focused on training anyone working in the CYP workforce.
okay.
Now, I've delivered suicide intervention training to about 130 international schools right around the world. So I've seen it from a real sort of multicultural, multinational approach, heard lots of stories around what schools need. Julie's got extensive experience in the education system as well. I'm a school governor. So we are really excited to put that together. And that's always been something that we've wanted to do. But we had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, so we're getting there, aren't we, Julie?
We are, and that doesn't mean we're not touching schools at the moment. I guess what
Yeah.
we're doing with our children and young people is looking at what we can do around basic awareness training under our own umbrellas for now. But all of that informs that training moving forward. So again, reliable evidence base, schools, colleges, universities, social groups, Han does the rugby groups. I'm doing some work with some fostering agencies around cared for young people where we know there's an increased vulnerability. So that's really nice. Yeah. And
Incredible.
that post-vention bit, I guess, which has been a
So
really powerful
important.
piece that
Yeah.
I've kind of delved a bit more into over the last year to 18 months.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like you're both keeping yourselves slightly busy with a lot of things going on, but it's amazing, genuinely. And I'm so happy to sort of have this conversation with you both to learn a little bit more about all the work that you are doing because you're doing a great job with it. It sounds, and it's that growth thought for the future, isn't it? How do we make this accessible to everybody so that
Yep.
we're all involved in it, aren't we? So everybody takes a
Mm.
sort of a stock to it. And Hannah, earlier on, you said about sort of you could talk to your younger self, what you didn't know
Yeah.
then. And that's the
Yeah.
challenge, isn't it, for all of us. It's that, and I use this sort of, we only know what we need to know when we need to know it. And sadly, with
Yep.
suicide, it's when we've lost somebody to suicide and we go,
Yeah.
oh, we didn't realize.
Yeah.
Um, Sort of coming towards the end of this conversation, it's incredible how quickly the time just disappears, isn't it,
Mm.
when we're
Yeah.
engaged. Sort of handing it over to both of you, a few minutes
Mm.
left before we close this, but any thoughts or things you want to share and make sure people hear so
Mm.
that when we're, putting
Mm.
this out there, they can connect or they know the direction or they know what to do next. What do you think?
I want to say one thing first, because you mentioned going back to Han's younger self and Hannah, that younger self, I'd want
Mm.
to say hindsight.
Yeah.
Hindsight can be really cruel. We kind of
Yep.
beat ourselves up with what we should have said, what we shouldn't have
Yep.
said, what we could
Yep.
have done. And I think in this world, we need to be really kind with ourselves. We do the best we can with the
Mm.
knowledge that we have.
Yep.
And hopefully, moving forward, if people do engage in training sessions and awareness sessions, then they'll find out a little bit more. So, Hannah, I'll let you have final word with how we can engage people in the training.
I would want to give people reassurance that this training is not about scarce statistics or anything that feels kind of unsafe or unduly heavy or traumatic. That's not what this training is about. This training is about equipping people with the skills and knowledge to support themselves, to support people around them, to support their work colleagues. And that might be a slight change in culture, a slight change in policy. It might just help that when a staff member, in 18 months, 2 years' time, 5 years' time, is returning to work after a suicide attempt, they are given the support they need because somebody within that team has better knowledge and confidence to talk about safety plans, talk about wellness recovery action plans, to look at what's the support that you need on returning to work. Um, so I kind of want this conversation around suicide to be normalized. And I know we are getting there as a society, but I think still there's a hesitation for workplaces to send colleagues on courses such as ours because it's like, well, I don't really want to go there. I don't really want to sort of have to think about that. And actually, this is something that is most likely going to affect all of us at some point in our lives to some degree. And so let's just feel more equipped and let's know more about where we can signpost people to, and crucially also how we can look after ourselves. And that's what we're so passionate about, aren't we, Julie? That this is something that we want people to enjoy this learning because it will help them to feel more confident and equipped. And yeah, we want to encourage people to to talk to us and find out a little bit more about it. And if they've got concerns or got questions, have a conversation like this with us. We're
Yeah,
super happy to jump on a call with people, aren't we, Julie?
we are definitely happy to jump on a call.
Yeah.
And if
Amazing.
people want to know where to find the training, I mean, go to the Mental Health First Aid website or to our own website, junah.co.uk. There's information there. There's some really nice blogs around how this all came together. So a bit more of what we've been doing today.
Amazing. Well, that's the invitation to everybody out there to go and check out junah.co.uk. Thank you both. I knew it was going to be lovely just to sit down and have a conversation and to catch up. And Julie, we have spoken before, and Hannah, we've spoken many times. But this is the conversation that continues, isn't it? And I think
Yeah.
that's what I always like to think about with all of these conversations. I might not record these episodes all the time, but there's just a
Mm.
continuation. The next
Yeah.
episode is the next episode, and it's the same with
Mm.
the things that we do in our world of training and supporting others. I always say, once you've done a training, that's not the end. That's the
Yeah.
beginning.
So,
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
the start of the journey. So
yeah.
when you know it, you can do something with it,
Yeah.
and that's what I've loved about this conversation is you've taught me stuff today that I come
Mm.
along and I just want to hear and I want to learn and I want to understand. So thank
Mm.
you both so much. I
Mm.
wish you all the very best of luck with Junah, and
Thank
I have
you.
no doubt it's going to fly and it's going to be an amazing thing because you are passionate about it, and that's what it comes down to. It's the passion and the reason why you do it. So thank you both.
Yeah.
Any final
Thank you, Matt.
thoughts from both of you?
Just a big thank you for inviting us along to have a conversation.
Pleasure.
Yeah. Yeah, and just that little message of self-care that Julie and I always give people, that whoever is listening to this, please be kind to yourself and think about what you need now and in the future, and reach out for support, because there's brilliant support out there.
Brilliant stuff.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Matt.
And for everybody that's listening, if you do need extra help and support, if you are struggling, we always want to make sure, you're not on your own. You really aren't. There are people out there that are ready to listen, ready to support. So please, know where those contacts and connections can be made. I will drop links into those as well into this post. But Samaritans is out there if you need a safe space to talk to somebody, 116123. There's also, you can text to shout 85258. And there are many other organizations as well. So, we will make sure that people are aware of where to go if they need help and you're feeling, vulnerable, or you need any extra support. So thank you both, truly, from the bottom of my heart. I really appreciate your time today. And I look forward to catching up with you both soon.
Take
Thanks,
care, Matt.
Matt.
Thanks.
Bye.